Welcome, everybody, to the Pro Wrestling Wire podcast, part of ProWrestlingWire.net, AIWF Network, and, of course, Helix Rock Radio every Wednesday night from 9 to 10. This is Rick Del Santo. Today, I am joined by Lucky P. Larson. What's going on?
Esquire.
Esquire. Excuse me. Let me get that right.
Esquire.
There you go. Because it's legit. You told me beforehand. So, yeah.
I did not print these diplomas out of a Cracker Jack box. You
didn't go to Staples? No?
No, I did not. I went to Vanderbilt Law School.
There you go.
You can ask many of the names that I mentioned to you before we went on the air that I've represented in this business. It is not just a work. It is a shoot. I am a lawyer and keep half our locker rooms out of trouble.
Can't get any better than that, right?
Well, it keeps the roof over my head.
Yeah. So let's talk about your youth and stuff like that. When did you discover pro wrestling?
I like to say, because it's true, that because Lucky P. Larson never tells a lie, that I was a fan of wrestling before WrestleMania 1. So I know that I've been a fan longer than most of your viewers and listeners and people in our locker rooms have been alive. My dad used to take me every month to Boston Garden because I'm from the world's greatest city, Boston, Massachusetts, and went there every month, picked it up very quickly, was a fan very quickly, had my absolute favorites very quickly, including one who stood above the rest. I'm sure we'll get into that later, but I was a very devout and loyal fan, and the more I got into it, the more I got into it, and I think, as my friends have said from back then, if me from back then would know all the things that me now has done in the last 8 or 9 years, me from back then's head would explode. I realized that, in the grand ocean of this business, I'm an amoeba. In the area in which I work, okay, I might be a bigger fish than that. But in the grand scheme of the world, I'm an amoeba and I get it. Yet for someone like that to have done all the things I've done still blows my mind.
Who were some of your favorites growing up, and how did you decide to get into managing, and how did you decide on that's what you wanted to do in wrestling?
Well, my favorite is easy. I believe the most entertaining professional wrestler of all time is, without question, and I phrase it like this. The man had such great control of an audience that when he was the most hated wrestler in the world, even though I rooted for him, he was voted, when PWI actually, their awards mattered, he was voted the most hated wrestler of the year 2 years in a row. Then he turned face, and the very next year he was most popular wrestler of the year. So most hated, most popular. And because I was so sucked in by his charisma and his ability to talk and his ability to entertain, while nobody would say he was Bret Hart or Kurt Angle or he who shall not be named in the ring, to me, the most entertaining professional wrestler of all time is without a doubt Rowdy Roddy Piper. And therefore, I hated Hulk Hogan my entire growing up because Hogan would constantly screw Roddy Piper over.
Yeah.
Now, to answer your second question, I will say this. My law firm, where I was for 24 years until our senior partner passed away and the firm closed, and I've been somewhere else since. At one point, our receptionist was the cousin of Mike Rapata, the Colorado kid.
Yeah.
Who I knew of because I was a bit of a wrestling junkie. My friends now call me the walking encyclopedia of useless wrestling information. But growing up in Boston on our UHF channels, we had every independent that was out there. We had Memphis, we had Global, we had ICW, we had if it was on TV, we had it in Boston. And so I remember the Colorado kid. And
was this Destination America, like prior to becoming Destination America? There was like another name for it. I'm trying to remember.
What,
The
the
channel.
UHF channel?
Yeah, the channel. Yeah.
Oh no, these were just the different channels in Boston, like Channel 13, Channel 10 out of New Hampshire, Channel whatever, because we had all the Boston was naturally the hub, so we could
Right.
get the New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut channels, and if any of them had wrestling, we would get it.
Right.
So I would end up taping wrestling on my VCR and watch it. Uh, so I was familiar with Mike Rapata as the Colorado Kid. And then when he came to my firm once, I I was known to be a wrestling fan, and so my receptionist, who was his cousin, introduced me, and he and I became friends. And through him, I ended up meeting the legendary promoter that I worked for the first 6 or so years of my career, if you want to call it that, in Bert Prentice. And Bert Prentice would ask me questions because far be it from Bert to not take advantage of a free opportunity for some professional advice that he doesn't have to pay for. So I love Bert, very loyal to Bert, indebted to Bert forever. But Bert would call me up all the time and ask me questions and things, and I would always be happy to help him. You know, I certainly knew who Bert Prentice was. And eventually, after I had helped him out a lot, he asked me, you know, I know you're a big wrestling fan. Is there, a dream in wrestling that you've got that maybe I can help you with? I said, absolutely. He said, what's that? And of course, I named a wrestler that I would like to meet. And he said, yeah, I don't know about that. Little did he know that I would end up managing that person a number of times. But he said, well, anything else? And I said, well, I'm probably too old and out of shape to be a wrestler. He said, well, I'll tell you what. I think you'd be a good heel manager. I think people would hate you. I said, gee, thanks, I think. And so he said, all right, we're going to do a show. And if you want to be involved, I said, I'd love to be involved. Are you kidding? I said, all right, well, you're going to manage Mike. Mike, although I've grown to absolutely hate the Colorado Kid, Mike Rapata, when he puts on face paint and becomes the Joker and I manage him, he and I are a great team. So I was managing the Joker and another guy who was known as the Riddler, and they went up against Daniel Leeds and LT Falk. And I was told, all right, come up with a character, come up with a name. I said, all right. So that's a whole nother story. I'm not sure you want to get into, but regardless, I came up with a name. And so I showed up, we did the show, and I left. I thought it was a one-off, and I was like, well, that was fun. I'm glad I got to be part of it, got to put a match together, see how everything's done. And then Bert called me a couple days later and said, so what did you think? I said, I had a blast. He said, good, because you got to come back. I said, well, I'm certainly happy to come back. I'd love to. What do you mean I have to come back? And he said, well, and I kid you not, and I know for a fact that this is true because I know who it was. He said that he started getting phone calls after the show asking who the manager was because there were people who said, again, not my words, theirs, that I was the most entertaining part of the show. And I said, I don't believe that. And he said, it's absolutely true. And it turned out, when I found out who they were the core of what soon became known as the Legion of Lucky, which was my fan club. And there's a Legion of Lucky Facebook page in addition to the Lucky P. Larson Facebook page. And the club grew to the point where we'd be on TV and they'd even be acknowledged. Like Jerry Lawler came on one time and said, yeah, I know Lucky P's got a following. Normally it's, the tax collectors and lawyers and the dog catcher, but, so they were acknowledging that, there was this group, and they would take over and sit the entire front row of Omen Arena shows and openly root for me and have all the heels that I was managing, to the point where we had a show in Burns, Tennessee once, and probably 75% of the building were rooting for me. And I was in virtually every match. And Bert got so mad, he said, we're not coming back here anymore, because they were turning on all his beloved baby faces, to the point where eventually Bert pulled me aside and said, all right, look, Lucky, you got two choices. He said, I'm either going to turn you face or you're going to have to piss off your fans. because I said, well, I don't want to be a baby face. So I said, all right. So literally, I went out and I told the Legion of Lucky they could all go to hell, and I didn't need them. I didn't care about them, et cetera, et cetera. And you know, I told them, look, you want to help me out? Boo me out of the building. And so they did. So, and to me, the idea that it would have exploded like it has blows my mind. Bert always said, "Oh, I knew it would." I said, There's no way you could have known that, 8, 9 years later, I would have sold out of like 4 batches of T-shirts. I would have been the color commentator for 3 or 4 different shows. I have managed so many people. I've managed James Ellsworth, Katie Lee, Lanny, Tommy Rich, Doug Gilbert, Carlito, Scott Steiner, Rhino, the Moondog. I've been decked by Jerry Lawler more times than I can count, by Dr. Tom, by the Rock and Roll Express, by Coco Beware, Rob Conway, Moose, Shane Strickland. I've been wormed by the Boogeyman. I've been knocked out by Cowboy Bob Orton's cast. I've been hit with Jimmy Hart's megaphone. I've been nailed by Jim Cornette's tennis racket. I've been kicked in the face by the Berserker, choked out by the Sandman while I got caned by Kimona. I've been slapped by Baby Doll. I've tapped out to Miranda Gordy. I've stomped on Too Cold Scorpio and Tommy Dreamer and Shane Douglas and C.W. Anderson and choked Brian Pillman Jr. And I've been screwed over by Tommy Young. I've been screwed over by Bobby Eaton, who worked as a special ref. That just literally all off the top of my head. And of course, I've worked with Missy Hyatt a number of times. So, yeah, not bad for an amoeba. And far be it from me to point out, I am at 43 championships and counting, including the current reigning SICW Classic champion, the 2-ton monster, the walking mountain, Kowalski.
Let's talk about that. I have that in my notes. I wanted to talk about that. What is it like working with Kowalski and your relationship with him, and how that just so happened to be put together?
Well, when I came to SICW, it was shortly after USA Championship Wrestling went by the wayside when Bert Prentice passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And Herb had come down there a couple times to USA with Travis Cook, who is a brilliant mind and a good personal friend of mine, Miss Judge. But Herb was looking, I believe, for someone else to do some commentary work. And I fit the bill because I've been doing commentary for USA. And as you can tell, I'm clearly shy and, introverted and don't really talk much about myself or wrestling. So I said, all right, I'll give it a shot. And behind the scenes, I started to maneuver my way in. And then Kowalski and Mauler McDarby, who was one half of the measuring stick of tag team wrestling, the professionals, started talking about the boss, this mysterious boss. And when Kowalski had a Central States title match, the boss revealed himself to be me. May or may not have allowed Kowalski to use his briefcase to knock out Gary Jackson and win the Central States title before Bobby D stole it. And I started working with Kowalski and Mauler McDarby, who I worked with for several months. Mauler then took some time off, came back with Sean Santel as the professionals who I manage. I've also brought in the greatest tag team on God's green earth, Roughshot Lamont Potts and the notorious Bradley Diggs, the LA Hustlers, the only three-time SICW tag team champions under my watch. Kowalski has won all 3 belts, the tag team belts with Mauler McDarby, the Classic Wrestling Championship, and the Central States Championship, all under my watch. So I'd say we're doing pretty well. And we've now recently brought in Axe Allwart, the most dangerous man in SICW, the master of the pile driver. People get carried out on a stretcher. So the Dogtown Underground, which is my group at SICW, is a powerful group. And Kowalski stands atop the mountain, which is ironic because he is a mountain. So anybody who wants to try and knock him off, have at it. See if you can walk through the walking mountain. I don't think so.
So, wow. Did you Now, if I remember correctly, did not Kowalski work against Greg Anthony last year? Or was that earlier this year?
No, no, that was in a steel cage.
Yes.
Uh, Greg Anthony, who is a slimy sleaze bag of a excuse for a champion, basically, from what I recall, used ether to weaken Kowalski. I mean, he is a man. He's a monster of a man, but he's a man. As I recall, he used ether, brass knuckles, a chain, kicked him in his Kowalskis, and then had the ref do a fast count. That's how he defeated Kowalski because he could never beat him fair and square one-on-one. See, I would never cheat, and neither would any of my guys. I'm like Bill Belichick, the greatest coach in the history of football or probably any sport. We're honest as the day is long, never cheated a day in our life, never lied, and Greg Anthony on his best day could not beat Kowalski on his worst without cheating.
That seems a little far-fetched, I think. You used all that?
He used all that, yeah.
All that. Wow.
All that.
Wow.
Yep.
That's incredible.
What are you going to believe? Your own eyes or me?
Well, I watched it on TV.
That's what I said. You're going to believe your own eyes or
Yes.
me?
I mean, I didn't see any of that.
Well, then, clearly what you saw was AI. I mean, as I've always said, do you think Tom Hanks really met President Nixon and President Kennedy? Was Jeff Goldblum really chased by dinosaurs? No,
those are movies.
Not. Of course not. Did Greg Anthony actually cleanly beat Kowalski? No.
I saw a lot of shenanigans leading up to that. That's all I saw.
Yeah, and the shenanigans were all on the part of Greg Anthony.
All right. So, you guys gonna look to meet Greg Anthony anytime again soon?
Anytime that Greg Anthony would like to grow a set, have a little courage, and put the belt on the line against a man who is bigger, stronger, and better than him, and has the greatest mind in professional wrestling in his corner, we are more than welcome to that challenge. Come on, big boy. Come on, golden boy. See what you got.
As luck would have it, I'll be talking to him this coming Sunday, so I'll have to remind him of this if you don't mind. I'll let him know.
You can give him a solid gold engraved invitation to get his whipped by Kowalski anytime you like.
Interesting. All right. So before we move forward, I want to ask you about Bert Prentice. So you enjoyed working for Bert?
Tremendously.
Yeah. He seemed like a really good guy. I spoke to him once or twice. I actually tried to get him to do the podcast, but he didn't seem too interested in doing interviews. So at all, as a whole.
Well, Bert was extremely, extremely old-fashioned when it came to the business.
Mm-hmm.
More so than most anybody I've met. Herb is fairly old school as well, which comes through in SICW, which is one of the reasons I think it is so good. But Bert was the godfather of Tennessee wrestling. Everything went through Bert. He was the glue that held it together. It was through Bert, obviously, that I got to work with many of these talents, and especially Jerry the King Lawler, who I have had the pleasure or mispleasure, however you want to call it, of working with several times. He has beaten me up more times than I can count. He's beaten me up more than anybody in this business. But, we'll never be over between me and Jerry Lawler.
Yeah. I guess not. So one of the things I enjoy about SICW is that the presentation of the television program. Herb's a great guy. He's been on this show before. He will be returning next week, actually. So I'm looking forward to talking to him again. You
can have him thank me for all of the entertainment I provide as the greatest color commentary in the history of the business. I mean, it's Jesse Ventura, Bobby Heenan, Gorilla Monsoon, Jerry Lawler, Jim Ross, Taz, and Lucky P. Larson Esquire. I mean, I put Gordon Soley to shame.
The greatest of all time, you put to shame.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. Gordon Soley, Bill Mercer, Bob Caudle.
I'm familiar with all of them.
The greatest.
Bill Mercer from World Class.
Yeah.
Bob Caudle from Georgia Championship Wrestling, and then WCW days before and NWA toward the end there. Yep. There's little you can throw out there that I'm not going to be aware of, but yeah, I would say that my color commentary next to Dr. Drew's play-by-play, the back and forth, the chemistry that we've developed over the last couple of years, I've actually had people tell me that is some of the best part of SICW.
Yes. I mean, I think you and your group there, I mean, I think that it makes for good television, good wrestling television. It's a very good old school style product that's put on. It
is
studio style wrestling. There's a couple rows of people, and there's no ring introductions really as far as music and whatnot and entrances. You go to it.
We do that on our big house shows.
Yes.
We come to a house. Generally, what SICW does is has a big house show on Saturday nights, and we have several hundred people there. I believe they're generally between 300 to 500 people at those shows. And you have your music, you have the introductions. I usually interrupt Drew and do my own introductions because I'm just better than he is. But then the TV is generally taped Sunday mornings. And you're right, it is not nearly the crowd as you can see on television, but it's done that way intentionally. It's not, well, we can't get people to come because obviously we get plenty of people to come on Saturday nights. We have a smaller venue, fewer seats. It's more of a homey, as you said, studio atmosphere. You go back and look at WCW in the days, or the old NWA days, when they have all the flags and the Road Warriors would run to the ring and beat up the Mulkey Brothers in 5 seconds. You didn't have much of a crowd there either.
No, it was probably like 30 people maybe at the most. Yeah.
When they'd go to the Greensboro Coliseum or the Omni, they'd sell out and have thousands of people.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You guys you use the TV to build towards the house shows on Saturdays,
exactly.
Which makes sense. It's very old school style professional wrestling television. And I think that Herb is very good at keeping with tradition and keeping the product going. And, because there's not a lot of guys out there like that are producing wrestling like that anymore.
That's why Herb has been doing this for 51 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love talking to him about it. He's, there's a lot of great talent over there. Is there anybody outside of the guys you manage that you that you got your eye on that you think that are great talent?
Well, clearly, if they're in the Dogtown Underground, they are the best talent SICW has because I manage them. So I'm not going to put over somebody I don't manage. However, there are some young upcoming stars in SICW because there's always someone ready to take the next level and go to the next step. And we've got Big Nasty Glenn Williams, who is the current Central States champion, who will be teaming with the Walking Mountain Kowalski at our upcoming show in January against the Thief Bobby D and that big goofy gorilla brain, little Joey Helms, who has tried his hand against Kowalski and even myself a few times. And every time he's either been helped out of the ring, handcuffed to the ring, and beaten with my own briefcase. Yeah, but he's a glutton. He wants to come back. He used to be under my tutelage. Then he turned his back on me. He stole money from Stephen E., another good friend of mine. So if we got to beat his head in a little bit more, he's got a big, strong body. I don't take it away from him, but big, strong body, teeny little brain.
That's a shame.
Jimmy Valiant, Boogie Woogie, legendary Boogie Woogie. Wait a minute, baby. Wait a minute. Hang on. What are you doing around
What was that going there, brother? This is our neighborhood.
You done made a mistake.
You should be retired, Boogie.
Wait a minute, boys. Let me take a bite of my king dog.
You say king dog?
King dog?
Is that what you said?
What happened? Come on, boy.
Don't let hunger bully you. Get yourself a king dog, and you too can become a super hunger fighter.
Let's see.
There are other talents from SICW who are traveling and making their name known. I personally don't like him. I think he sucks. But Brandon Beretta is certainly making waves.
Yeah.
I will never forgive him for teaming with Bob Orton when Bob Orton knocked me unconscious with his cast, and all because I told him to his face that I would never forgive him for turning on Roddy Piper, the greatest of all time. And he responded by knocking me out. I didn't appreciate that.
It's a little irrational.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Tell me about you've had some action against the Big Texan at times.
I have. And, I have taken one for the team. It is all over social media that the Big Texan was, again, big man. I'm not taking anything away from him. He's a big man. Not as big as Kowalski, but he's big. Not as tough as Kowalski, but he's tough. But he's not very smart. See, Kowalski is smart enough to have me in his corner, advising him, giving him strategy, giving him encouragement. See, I never interfere. I never involve myself. I'm just there for moral support. But the Big Texan decided he was going to take his focus away from the Walking Mountain and on to Lucky P. Larson Esquire. So he chose to deck an innocent man and then stand there and gloat about his handiwork, which of course allowed Kowalski to squash the Big Texan from behind, knock him down, hit him with the K-bomb. 1, 2, 3, still your classic wrestling champion. They handcuffed me to the ring the match that Kowalski won the classic championship. That didn't stop Kowalski. Kowalski is the immovable object, and with the brains of Lucky P. Larson behind him, this man will be champion forever.
Well, he's definitely a big man and a talented individual. So
he's won every single title there is to win in SICW.
Yeah.
All of them. Name me anybody else in SICW who has won the tag team championship, the classic championship, and the heavyweight championship.
Top of my head, I cannot think about that.
Classic wrestling championship, beat the Big Texan. Central States championship, beat Bobby D. Tag team championship with Mauler McDarby, beat Gary Jackson and Billy McNeil. And actually, he beat Gary Jackson for the Central States title. It was Bobby D who stole it from him. In my mind, I keep thinking that he beat him too, but we were screwed. But he's moved on to bigger and better things.
You travel around to some other organizations as well outside of SICW. I have here the Pro Wrestling Alliance, which is out of Tennessee. So you're still working in Tennessee quite a bit. From where are you actually located right now? Sorry.
Right now, I'm in my home office, as you can see.
Besides,
you asked, so I told you.
I mean, where do you? Where's your residence?
My residence is in a suburb of Nashville.
Okay, so you're close to Nashville. Okay,
I am relatively close to Nashville. However, I am not from Tennessee. I am from Boston. I'm from the world's greatest city. You remember up there, we won the war, which for some reason doesn't seem to sit well with a lot of people around here when I remind them of that. But it's not my fault. Grow some teeth. Now, I will say this, that yes, I work for SICW in Illinois. I work for PWA in Middle Tennessee. I work for Tennessee Championship Wrestling in Middle and West Tennessee. I work for Hub City Wrestling, which is one of the most upcoming new strong promotions in West Tennessee. I work for a number of promotions when they come and request it. I've worked for TIWF in West Tennessee. I've worked for Union City Wrestling in Union City, also in West Tennessee. For quite a while, I worked with the Rat Pack at Revolutionary Wrestling Entertainment out of Arkansas. I have worked at Battle on the Border. I am, in fact, a Hall of Famer at the Rock and Wrestling Federation. So I've worked for several different companies. I've worked for SPWA. I've worked for Mid-South Pro Wrestling. Even had to suck it up and take Greg Anthony's money because, I was in such demand there. I worked for a number of different promotions, won championships many, many places, from New South and Kentucky to wherever you want to go. I've been there. I've even managed at CAC in Nevada, managing Loverboy Matt Riviera at the CAC shows. So, and I've, of course, also managed at Charlotte, North Carolina in The Gathering, not The Gathering of Juggalos. T-Mart presents The Gathering, which is a great fan convention every August. I've managed in the main event 4 out of the 5 years and managed the other year, managed a couple matches there as well. So I've always been involved there. And Lucky P. Larson, Esquire, the Legion of Lucky, the Dogtown Underground, wherever I am, we take control. I manage Bam Bam Bundy and MJ Davis in Hub City Wrestling, and they are taking over. I manage the Dogtown Underground at SICW. I've managed the Rat Pack for the last few years before they all went their separate ways. So I'm usually the glue that keeps together these strong units.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you're pretty busy out there in Tennessee. It sounds like there's a million promotions out there.
There are a lot of promotions in Tennessee. There's no question. I have worked for a lot of them. I've also worked for TAP. There are some I have not worked for, but I have worked for a great number of them.
Yeah, wow, it's still pretty active down there. I mean, I live in Connecticut. I know I told you that before. In a town called Wallingford. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
I worked for a summer in Hartford, and
yeah.
I even remember the Hartford Whalers.
Yeah, well, I used to go to those games when I was younger. My father used to take me to, well, I grew up in New Haven. He used to go to the New Haven Nighthawks games, but my dad was such a hockey fan. We'd always go to the Whalers games all the time.
Wasn't there also like a AA Red Sox minor league team in New Haven?
Oh, yes. When was this? Probably earlier 2000s. I'm trying to think. Was that the Ravens, maybe?
I know that the reach of Boston sports is infinite. I enjoy when the Predators play the Bruins, or the Celtics play the Grizzlies, or the Patriots play the Titans. In fact, a few years ago, the Patriots played the Titans on a Sunday, and the Bruins played the Predators on a Monday, and this town was completely taken over by Boston sports fans.
It must have felt good.
It did.
Yeah.
There's a New England Patriots fan club here that I watched about 8 Super Bowls at.
That's incredible. Really,
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
I've got 6 framed pictures on my wall over there.
That's awesome. Yeah. Do you like living in Tennessee? I mean, I don't know. I've driven through Tennessee once on a weekend.
Well, let's see. I can't stand country music.
Well,
I root for 4 teams: the Red Sox, the Patriots, the Celtics, and the Bruins. And almost every show I walk into, I get booed out of the building.
I guess you don't like Tennessee.
Of course, at SICW, it is a little different. I took a friend up to SICW with me for a show, and he said, in Tennessee, they boo you. In Illinois, they want to kill you. I said, yeah, that's pretty accurate.
How far do you have to drive from Tennessee to go into Illinois? But how often do you guys record?
We generally have TV tapings once a month.
Once a month. Okay.
Usually tape 4 shows, and it's about a 4.5 to 5 hour drive. But there's a very good sushi restaurant on the way back.
Well, there you go. There you go.
And they do. These people up there, they do not like me. There are a few smart, unique fans who wear my shirts, and are supporting me and the Dogtown Underground. But I'd say 95% of them want to see me get beat up, hurt. I mean, Gary Jackson broke my arm up there. It's finally healed pretty well, but it took several months, and I had to wear a sling for several months up there. And people would accuse me of taking a tire iron out of my sling and hitting people with it. I mean, just the things that they come up with.
The things they came up with. I mean, there's no cameras that see that.
No.
I mean, Bob Orton held that cast for about a good 2 years for that broken.
I think he's held it a lot longer than that.
Yeah,
because he knocked me out with it just a couple of years ago.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Iron Mike Sharp had an arm brace for years too.
Yeah.
Some people just slow healers.
Iron Mike Sharp was on the first indie show I ever went to. The first time when I discovered independent wrestling, it was him. I think it might have been Jimmy Snuka, Northeast Championship Wrestling out of North Haven, Connecticut. It was incredible.
I met Jimmy Snuka a number of times. Never got to meet Iron Mike Sharp, but I had a very, very, very close personal friend in professional wrestling who passed away last year, who used to tell me stories about Iron Mike Sharp.
Yeah, I hear from I'm friends with Mario Mancini, Paul Roma.
Mhm.
They run a school up here, and I hear stories about everybody that and Mario, great storyteller, and he sharing his memories. He's got some good things to say about Mike, Iron Mike.
I will say this: I have met so many of the talented men and women who have put their bodies on the line over the last however many years I've been doing this. Uh, and, I take a shot every now and then, like from the Big Texan or the people I mentioned earlier, but I'm not in the ring taking the shots they are all night long. And so I've got nothing but respect for everyone who gets in the ring. And one of the few people I have not yet met who I wanted to and still do is Mario Mancini, who was supposed to be at the Fan Fest last year but
Right.
couldn't make it. And I actually was one of the few people there who was disappointed Mario Mancini didn't show up. While other people were in line to meet these, high top level stars, I'm wanting to meet someone I'd never met before because I would like to talk to them. So, meanwhile, FanFest 3 coming up in a few months, and once again, I will be bringing the Walking Riot, the First Lady of Wrestling, my friend Missy Hyatt. So,
Well, I have that down here in the notes. I was hoping to get to talk a little bit about the Fan Fest coming up May 16th and 17th, 2025.
yes, at the Hilton at the airport this year, you do not even have to go far from the airport when you show up, and we will have a great night of wrestling. We'll have Bill After Show on Friday. Then you'll have a meet and greet Saturday, and then a great night of wrestling. And I believe we'll once again have the Bruiser Brody Memorial Battle Royal. And I'd like to know who's going to toss out a 2-ton monster named Kowalski.
Yeah. I wanted to go down there last year because it seemed very interesting. I wasn't able to. I did a lot of conventions or was that this year? This year, excuse me.
Yes,
Next
you
year.
missed the greatest tag team on God's green earth, the LA Hustlers, become the three-time tag team champions of SICW.
I'm not sure I'll be making it this year. I'm sorry. I have two weddings to help pay for. So two of my daughters are getting married this year.
What is more important? You got to get priorities in your life. What's more important, your kids or wrestling?
Well, that'll sometimes cause an argument here, but pro wrestling is very important to my life. So
As well, it should be.
it is. It is. So I go to a lot of shows. I work a lot of shows, and it's amazing that pro wrestling, especially at this age, I'm going to be 50 in a few months, but it's amazing that even still at this age, how much love I have for professional wrestling, I think.
Me too.
It's just I've been a fan since probably 1984, roughly.
About
And
the same time as me.
yeah, I went to my first show at 4 years later, my first live show. I just watched it on TV. And then when I went to my first live show, New Haven, Connecticut, was a television taping. That's when I went through the whole obsession mode. You know what I mean? And it's today I still watch wrestling. I mean, what do you think about wrestling basically now? It's there's so much compared to when we were younger
Well, I will
around
say
that time
this.
period.
I've always said to me, the biggest difference between wrestling when I grew up and wrestling now is not the fact that kayfabe is on life support if it's not completely dead, although we do try to keep it alive at SICW. It's not the fact that there are spoilers on the internet. It's not the fact that everybody seems to know everything. To me, the biggest problem in wrestling today is the glut of pay-per-views. And I'll tell you why. Because back in the day, when we had WrestleMania once a year, and that was it, or you had WrestleMania and the Survivor Series, and that was it, or you had WrestleMania, the Survivor Series, and SummerSlam, and that was it, or you had WrestleMania, Survivor Series, SummerSlam, and the Royal Rumble, and that was it. And it stayed that way for a while.
Yeah.
You had 4 pay-per-views a year, meaning you had 3 months between each pay-per-view to build up stories, angles, to bring in the fans, to suck in the fans, to make them care about something. Now, with a pay-per-view every 3 weeks, we're putting matches on a Friday that are going to take place on a Saturday or Sunday pay-per-view with no build-up that fans have seen 1,000 times. To me, that is the biggest difference between wrestling now and wrestling then. Now it's all about, I'm going to do a triple Canadian destroyer off the top rope through a flaming barbed wire table, and then you kick out at one, and then I'll beat you with a roll-up. It is more about high spots than it is about storytelling and emotion and really grabbing somebody and bringing them in there. That's why I said, I am never going to say Roddy Piper was the greatest ring technician of all time. His greatest move is an eye poke. I use it when I'm in the ring.
Right.
Because it's an homage to him. No one is going to say, yes, I mean, obviously Roddy Piper can wrestle, but no one is going to mistake him for Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, Kurt Angle, or he who shall not be named. But he could talk you into any arena. He could be a face. He could be a heel. He could be the good guy. He could be the bad guy. He could make you love him. He could make you hate him because he told a story, because he was charisma personified. I would rather follow that and watch that than see somebody dive off the top rope, do 3 flips. I mean, yeah, that's talent, and I can't do that. But I'd rather be engrossed in the storyline and really care about what happens.
It doesn't keep me interested, honestly.
Right. There's only so many times. And when you've seen a triple Lindy, well, how soon before someone else tries to do a quadruple Lindy and falls and breaks their ankle?
Yeah. I mean, I've
Reed
always
just broke both his ankles jumping off the top of a cage through a table.
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah. I've always been, especially in the last couple of years, I've always been very trying to push this less is more, because it keeps you interested doing the slower build-ups and the more of a storytelling. And then instead of doing however many flips, every match, not every match, but every show has to have a table spot, has to have a steel chair spot, has to have a ladder spot, something. And it's just like, at this point, it's like you can predict when it's coming. Do you notice a little barrier around ringside?
Whenever you're sitting watching Raw, you know when they're going to commercial.
Yeah.
If I'm watching it on a DVR, I'll sit there, and when I see the commercial spot coming, I'll fast forward through it. And I'd say 98% of the time I'm right.
Yeah.
There's the occasional time when, I thought that was going to be a commercial. But 98% of the time I'm right. Because it takes a lot to, bring me in these days to a false finish that really I buy into. I've just seen it so much. And that's why I think SICW is different. We're telling stories, and I think that when you have shows and TV, that's what, like I said, I work at Hub City now, and Hub City's got television, and we're on WBBJ out of Jackson, and Hub City is telling stories and trying to have some old-fashioned angles going with the people I manage. We had Mr. Kennedy come in recently, and I may or may not have, been accused of choking Mr. Kennedy with my tie. I don't remember that happening, but, he couldn't beat MJ Davis by pinfall or submission. Right. He had to, somehow squeeze out a disqualification win, which, we question. But the bottom line is, we're bringing people in that people want to see. We're telling stories. That's what SICW is doing. That's what Hub City is doing. That's what Bert Prentice used to do. And that brings
Secondhand Heroes and Home for Wayward Villains is a comic book shop and gaming store that also features Magic the Gathering and D&D. Located at 18184 Leesville Road in Evington, Virginia, Secondhand Heroes is your one-stop shop for you to get your nerd on. Open 7 days a week at 11 a.m. They don't close until the dice stop rolling. They buy, sell, trade, barter, and haggle, specializing in collectible toys, both vintage and modern, comics, Magic the Gathering, video games, console, and arcade cabinets to play, all set to free play. Host your game night with us. Monday night D&D video game competitions, and so much more. Something for the collector and gamer in us all. call 434-317-0121 or shoot us an email with any questions to secondhandheroesva@gmail.com. Note, secondhandheroesva@gmail.com. That's 2ND, handheroesva@gmail.com. Come game with us.
Yeah, and Burt Prentice had a really good YouTube network as well, where he had lots of different companies on his YouTube network, or
Yeah,
and
the Prentice Wrestling Network on YouTube, and we had USA Championship Wrestling there, and SICW is on YouTube.
Yeah.
Hub City Wrestling, as I said, is on WBBJ out of Jackson, but their episodes are on YouTube. BBJ airs Hub City every Sunday night, and on Tuesday nights, the Sunday night episode is put on YouTube, and
I'm gonna look for it.
And I share all of those on my page, on the Lucky P. Larson page on Facebook.
Okay.
And then at PWA, there's usually somebody there who films a lot of our matches. And while we don't necessarily have a TV show or a YouTube channel for the company, a lot of our matches are put on there. I also work with Sean Hoodrich at Coastal City Wrestling, Coastal Championship Wrestling, CCW, which is at the Troubadour in Nashville.
Okay,
near Opryland.
That's not the Coastal that is basically out of Florida, is it?
Yes,
Or is it
yes.
the same one? They run a
Yes.
very good product over there. They have a great 30-minute TV that airs each and every week on YouTube as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
I work for them as well. I manage Sean Hoodrich. I've managed him against one of their champions, Cha Cha Charlie.
Yeah, great guy. Yeah.
So and we've been there a few times. Always put on a great show. Sean, myself, and Sean's Snake. We got a good picture up there of me, Sean, and the snake. He says, "It's my lawyer and my serpent. Which one's the bigger snake?" So
We got a few more minutes left. I want to ask a couple more questions, and then we'll get out of here. But how important is television and social media to wrestling in the modern age? I mean, we're sitting here talking about YouTube.
I think it's extremely important.
Yeah.
Because how else do you advertise your product, and how else do you make people know about your big shows if it's not through television or through social media and promotion? There's only so much you can do. Yes, you should post your towns. Yes, you should spread the word. But social media, television, advertisement, commercials, that's what gets people there.
There's a lot of companies that don't do that. And you know what I mean? That still don't seem to understand that. Don't even have a YouTube channel, which I think every company should at least have somebody out there filming on a phone or something and uploading it to YouTube.
That's what I'm saying. That SICW is on YouTube every week, every Sunday night at 8 o'clock Central. Hub City is on WBBJ every Sunday night at 10:30 Central. And then SICW is available pretty much immediately thereafter on YouTube. Hub City's available on Tuesday on YouTube. Someone films the PWA shows and puts them up. I believe it's Rusty Rex's wrestling page.
I know Rusty, great guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I've seen matches from CCW with Sean Hoodrich. They put that up. They were commenting on what a great show they had there a couple weeks ago. And the picture they put up was Sean's match with me in his corner. So
yeah. That's awesome. Do you know Rusty personally? Or just from he I gotta tell you, he is a guy that's on his social media. He posts a lot of great he is a historian.
Yeah, and he holds up two hands and says 10 if he likes it.
So I like that he is always posting stuff, and each and every Friday he always asks everybody to share shows in the comments so that everybody could find out and see if there's any shows in their area. That's good. That's good.
Promoting.
Yeah. So I noticed you have t-shirts. Where can anybody find those? Because I'm interested in getting one.
Well, my t-shirts say "Shut up and you might learn something." I've sold out of several batches of them. If somebody wants one, you can easily message the Lucky P. Larson page. Follow. We've got over 4,000 followers on the Lucky P. Larson Esquire page on Facebook. I put up every show I'm going to be a part of. I've got pictures of pretty much every talent I've worked with. I've got I forgot. See, I told you it was off the top of my head. I just remembered a few more. I've been super kicked by Solo Sokoa. I've been hit with a steel chair by Rikishi. I've been low blowed by Brian Christopher. Those were a few more that I had forgotten about.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And basically, you said your Facebook page, Lucky P. Larson. Is there any
Lucky
other
P.
place
Larson
that
Esquire Facebook page. It's my smiling visage yelling into a microphone. And like I said, shut up, you might learn something. We've got T-shirts for sale. We've got cards. We've got little keychains, whatever you want. All your Lucky P. Larson Esquire needs. And yes, I am a real lawyer. Like I said, I've represented a lot of people in this business. Some, may or may not want it known. One who talked about it very openly in shoot interviews. So I have no problem saying so because she said so. And she was a very good friend of mine, and I miss her dearly, was Daphne Shannon Sproul. I was one of her lawyers. And I've done some work for a few of the Glow Girls. I've done some work for a number of the Tennessee legendary wrestlers. A lot of people I've worked with, a lot of fans. It's amazing. They'll hate me during the show, but they'll come to me on my way to my car and say, "Can I ask you a question?" I always know it's going to be about a case. So
I should have came to you when I had a problem with my ex-wife. But anyways.
Yeah, well, I've done a lot of that since I've gotten involved. And of course, I will give kudos as I will anytime, I'm talking wrestling. Bert Prentice and Mike Rapata get the credit for, or blame, however you want to say it, for me being involved. And one person I met through wrestling who became one of my absolute best friends, and I miss him every day, is Lanny Poffo.
Yeah. I've heard many great stories about him from friends that have worked with him. Mario has spoken greatly about him, and I don't know if he's going to come out to this year. I know he didn't make it last year. I'm not sure if he's coming out to the Fan Fest this year. I haven't seen him post anything and haven't spoken to him about it. But
well, there are a lot of names yet to come. I'll leave that to Herb. All I know is Missy will be there this year. So, but I talked to Lanny probably once a week after he moved to Ecuador. I helped him write his Hall of Fame speech. I still have it memorized. In fact, before we got on this, I actually recited the poetic part of it for you by heart. I was his guest at the after party after WrestleMania in San Jose when Randy got into the Hall of Fame. So he introduced me to pretty much the roster. So that was quite an honor. So I miss him a lot.
Yeah. I want to thank you for taking part in this episode tonight. And
my pleasure. I love talking about wrestling. I know you can't tell. I'm slightly passionate about it.
Just a little bit, just as much as I am probably. But we'll have to have you back sometime and maybe just talk about wrestling in general.
Anytime. Like I said, I'm always happy to talk about myself. I'm always happy to talk about wrestling. Happy to talk about Boston sports.
All right. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.